Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Got the Dan Kent fingers. You guys, welcome to the MuseCast. We have the one, the only Metaverse pastor, Dan Kent, is here with us.
Coming at you through the Metaverse. Woo.
Yes. He is so graciously connecting the circuited and the uncircuited.
The circuitized and the uncircuitized.
And the uncircuitized. I even wrote it down because I thought that was so cute.
I was very proud of that joke. And so it lands on different people in different ways. I'll say that. So
you got some laughs in house.
Did I?
So
oh, good.
You did. Yes,
good.
I was listening. You got some laughs. So Metaverse Pastor Dan Kent, Shawna, Boren, just hanging out here with you guys today. Happy Tuesday and welcome. Dan Kent, I have a question for you. If I say March Madness, what does that mean for you?
That means that it's still not above freezing and I'm still shoveling my driveway when it's supposed to be spring. That is absolute March Madness.
Okay. All right.
No, I'm kidding.
I was kidding. Okay, Dan.
No, I'm kidding. It's basketball. It's college basketball. So yeah. I'm not a big fan of college basketball, though. Are you?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah, I fill out a bracket every year. Yeah. So when you were talking on Sunday about biases and you were talking about the Vikings, I was like, I do that because my team is the Lakers, my professional team, the Lakers, and have been for years for a variety of reasons, a couple of different players that I really like. And then I love college basketball. I love just the emotions of it. I love like the idea of an upset happening, a 16 beating a 1, I just love it all. But I definitely believe that we as fandom fall into that grouping bias that you talked about. And those poor refs, they hear it up close, right then and right there. So
totally.
March Madness.
Yeah, I forgot that you're a basketball fan. And now I have this kind of secondary goal of getting you to like the Minnesota Timberwolves, so that maybe we could do a Boren Kent Timberwolves game. We can go and see.
Okay.
So
best bet. One, for them to get good. Number 2,
they're good. I think they're better than the Lakers this year.
My Lakers are not doing well at all this year. But a really great way to get me there is Lakers here in town. That would be a great game. And LeBron has to be playing. So you know what? I have been to Timberwolves games. When they had Zach LaVine, I thought this is a young team that could really, and then, they start trading away pieces and stuff.
Yeah.
I like Towns. I like Karl Anthony Towns. I think he's a good guy. I just need them to be a little bit more exciting.
Okay.
All right. Really good.
Hear me out. First of all, I love this. I love this Timberwolves team. Secondly, this is a proposal. This is like a staff meeting and it's live and people are listening to our staff meeting. What would you say about— They're getting a
peek behind the curtain. Yep.
Right. We got Tuesday MuseCast, Thursday Hoopcast. What do you think?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So is it just local? Do we just talk?
It could be whatever.
Hoops?
I'll talk. Here's the thing about me is I'll talk about anything, whether I know anything about it or not. So there you go.
All right. I'm going to put that in the percolator and let that simmer and see how it comes out. Hoopcast on Thursdays. Hey, MuseCast community, what do you think? Should we syndicate the show and branch out and do it? It'll be like Law and Order. We have different versions of the MuseCast.
That's right.
Oh, well, Dan, I am so excited, honestly, that we get to continue the conversation from your Sunday sermon. It was fun. It was funny. It was applicable. It was encouraging. We learned some stuff. I was saying to Dan, we had a stand-up comedy routine. We learned about some ophthalmology. Some science was thrown in, and then Jesus and theology. So it was a well-rounded sermon. And you get the fun task of presenting your own summary. What you cannot do in your summary, Dan, because you got to leave us more content for our discussion, you can't go into all the things you had to cut out. Your summary is what you shared. Your summary is what you shared, and then we'll give you an opportunity to share more. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay. This sermon, usually when I do a sermon, it's one that, like, when we're planning out these series and we're talking about the verses, usually it's one that I say, I want to do that verse. I want to do that verse. And sometimes I don't even know why. And that was the case with this one. I just the idea of the eye being a lamp. I'm just like, I need to learn about this, because I always, like, when I would draw comic book heroes, I would like create comic book heroes, you know, and I would always have them with light shooting out of their eyes. I'm just like, I got to find out what Jesus is talking about here. So, and what I found was that Jesus was kind of looking at he was trying to teach this spiritual truth, but he was using this kind of common understanding of how the eye works, where they literally thought that vision and seeing had a lot to do with light coming out of our eye, so that when we focused on something, it was actually light hitting something. But that raised an interesting question to me, that if Jesus is using this common understanding of seeing, what does that say about his divinity, that he's the creator of the universe, the creator of the eye, and he doesn't even know how an eye really works? And so I started off just by wrestling with that question, which I thought was an intriguing question. And that process actually led me full circle to this opinion that, no, Jesus was actually saying something very right about the eye when he was talking about light coming out. Now, light doesn't actually technically come out, but it is true that seeing is not just a passive. Well, seeing is a passive thing, but perceiving is not just a passive event. We bring a whole bunch to everything that we see. And I talked about, like, how our biases, how the narratives we carry in our head, how our personal experiences, our traumas, our life histories, our attitudes, all of those things shape how we see the world. And like, two people can look at the exact same thing and have profoundly different perceptions of what is happening there. And so then I looked at, okay, well, Jesus talks about not only is the eye the lamp of the body, not only do we bring a bunch of stuff to what we're looking at, but also we can do that in very healthy or unhealthy ways. And here I looked at the original language there. Jesus talks about having a good eye or a wicked eye, or an evil eye. And those kind of ways of looking at the world are radically different, where having a good eye, you're looking at the world graciously, you share, you're generous, you are encouraging, whereas with a wicked eye, you're very self-oriented, you're greedy, you're envious, and things like that. And then what I argued is that when you zoom out to the context of this verse, you really see how this teaching fits in with what he's saying about you can pursue treasure in heaven or treasure on earth. And you can't pursue treasure in heaven with the bad eye. You need to use the good eye, because you cannot serve both masters. They're not interchangeable. And so that was sort of the heart of the message. But then I did end on a reflection on what is that treasure that we are pursuing, and that was mostly just a real reflection, that I was kind of reflecting on what is that. And so often we assume the treasure of heaven is the forgiveness of sins and just going to heaven. And although it is that, I think that it's a lot more than that. And it's a lot more than that has to do with how we live right now. And there's so much treasure in pursuing God right here and right now. And so I articulated a little bit of what that might look like. But those are kind of a little bit longer discussions. And so maybe we can come back to it or something like that. But that was sort of the gist. And then, Shawna, I got to say too, I was so honored to be able to give my first communion. And I was really, it was really special to me to do that, because I do think that the communion is so sacred. And and it was a really great moment for me, and I loved being able to share that with everybody in Woodland Hills. And there's no place I'd rather, well, there is probably a couple places I'd rather give communion, like for instance, with the disciples in First Century Galilee. That would be pretty special. But
that would be
in the realm of reasonableness. I loved giving communion for Woodland Hills and our church. So
yeah,
that's my sermon.
It was a really sweet time just to break bread together in remembrance of all that Jesus has done for us. It was really poignant and sweet. And it's not something that we do every week, like some traditions, but I will say there are times when it feels more weighty, more meaningful than others. And this felt like a really meaningful time. So I'm glad that you were able to lead us in that. I say thank you. Honestly, I thought you were gonna say like, oh, my catamaran.
Yeah, well, there is that too.
By yourself.
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah. This is not first of all, my question to you right now, it has nothing to do really with the magnificence or weight of your sermon. It's just out of curiosity, because you talked about when you were describing the evil eye, and you're like, maybe that's where we get that term, like they gave the evil eye. And I was thinking to myself, I cannot imagine Dan Kent giving anyone the evil eye. Like, I just can't. Do you have a look, Dan, that like people know you mean business?
I think when I worked on the mental health units, we would get some sociopaths. We would get some drug addicts who were very manipulative and drug seeking. And I would give them very stern looks, like, you are not going to get away with any manipulation with me. And I would make it very clear. Or if we would get some patients who would kind of bully other patients, and I would stand in front of them, and I would go face to face with them and give them a very stern look, like, you have to go through me before you do anything like this. And so I have done that, but I wouldn't say it's evil eye. It's more like setting a clear boundary eye is what I would say I've done. So
it's you mean business. This is not going to happen. So not an evil eye at all. Actually sounds like a very protective eye.
I think that's what it probably is. Yeah. But I don't like doing it. That's the thing. I would rather, I like giving the jolly eye. That's
I know.
That's what I prefer. So
that's what I think of. I think jolly when I think of you. But to your sermon, Dan, I really did appreciate the deep dive into perception versus sight. Like, you and I could be looking at the same exact thing, and depending on my backstory and your backstory, my baggage, my history, my biases, we could perceive it totally differently. And what I want to say to people, I think sometimes when we say, oh, we have biases, people take that as an insult. It's just a reality. Like, we all have a reality, a function, a story in which we operate. And those are our biases. It's how we perceive something. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a reality. So I really did appreciate just looking at that. And when we are considering treasure, what we are going after, whether we are chasing the wind in bad investments, or we are chasing after the true treasures of the kingdom, our perception really does matter. And we could be deceived by what we perceive. And I venture to guess, and I'm curious to know your opinion, like, my guess is most folks who are pursuing the things of this world maybe don't realize it fully. I think many people think they are pursuing good things.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff you talked about, because their perception is maybe clouded or a little bit off.
Sure.
I don't know of very many people who are intentionally like, man, screw all the good stuff. I'm going after the me stuff. Right. I know, I'm sure there are folks, but I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that people are intentionally chasing after the wind because they don't see it as that?
Yeah, I think it's probably different. I do think that we are seduced into chasing the wind, but where it gets complicated is that, we do have to support ourselves. We do have to make money. We have to pay bills and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't think, even when I was talking about my awesome $5 million catamaran that I sometimes fantasize about, there is nothing wrong with owning in my mind, a yacht like that. you know, I personally don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that by itself. But I think that I think two people could own that yacht with profoundly different hearts. And I know that right now in my life, if I were to go and do that, it would not be with a good eye. It would be with an evil eye. And so that's where it gets complicated, where what is your heart as you're doing this? And, you know, I think that the other thing is, like, we just have so much, like, personal, like you said, personal baggage and trauma that shape how we perceive things. And when we have shaped how we perceive things, we've also shaped the things that we're pursuing and why we're pursuing it. And that can just, that's where the seduction happens, I think. And so, yeah, I think that, I don't think that we intentionally do it. I think that we usually get seduced into doing it, but sometimes it can feel intentional, because if you don't believe in God, if you have no faith, well, then all that there is accumulation and personal kind of wealth growth and things like that. There's not really much else out there in terms of creating a purpose and meaning for your life. And so in that sense, I think you are doing it intentionally, because there's nothing else. And as a believer looking at an unbeliever, I don't blame them. I mean, if I was an unbeliever, that's what I would do too. And I would shamelessly pursue my catamaran.
Yeah. I like what you just said about the deception piece, and how then the things that we are pursuing, then that can kind of even get a little, we can get seduced by that and begin to believe that, or not see fully that we're pursuing the wrong thing. And I think we've seen that over and again. Someone that we know their character, we know who they are, and then they begin to do something that they would normally say, that's not who I am. I'm not. And then the further they get into it, the more they can justify it and even begin to explain it away as good and rightful. And like, we've seen that over and again, and just how deceptive that can be. So my question for you, Dan, and then after this question, and we talk about your answer, I want to give you an opportunity, like we always do, to share anything that you had to leave out, because I know you, and I know you probably had gobs of notes, and I also know that time is a real reality. So I want to give you an opportunity to do that. But my question for you first is, we're looking at, evil eye versus good eye, and you ask the question, which eye are we developing? And if we as believers sometimes are deceived and seduced, and so aren't seeing things, or what we're seeing isn't being perceived rightly, how can we work on intentionally developing the good eye? How can we know, gosh, I'm kind of off here, I'm not seeing this rightly? How can we develop the good eye instead of further leaning into the other?
I think that there's two kind of like temptations, or not even temptations. Yeah, I guess you could call them temptations. The one temptation is to, listen to your heart, or trust in your own intuitions. And that by itself, I think, is a recipe for disaster, because you're never going to grow if you keep listening to your own heart. I mean, you're just going to keep reinforcing yourself. And so you'll never get out of yourself, because that's who you're listening to. So I think, in my opinion, you really need an outside standard. And that's why Jesus tells his disciples to refer to him as their one true teacher in Matthew 23. And so I think that we have to have Jesus at the center of how we think, what we pursue, the lens through which we look at the world, the lens through which we look at ourselves. And so that's the key. But it can't just be that either. There's some people who just want to look at Jesus, but we'll never grow if we don't know about ourselves too. We have to know where we are. We have to know where we want to be. And so that's kind of the back and forth between learning more about Jesus, learning more about myself, learning more about Jesus, learning more about myself. And I think that process is a way that we can develop the good eye. Also, being in community, where if you're in a community where people can help you see who you really are, that really helps too. And it sounds like it should be easy to know who I really am, but we get so good at hiding ourselves from ourselves, and a lot of times we need other people to show us ourselves. And that sounds weird, but I think that's true. So that's my off the cuff answer to that. That's a good question.
Yeah, when you were just talking about that, like we sometimes don't even know ourselves. I just think about where it says the heart is deceitful above all else. Who can know it? Like we can deceive ourselves.
Yeah.
Ourselves can deceive ourselves, and we can really not really know. We can really not really know what is going on within ourselves. And so, yes, leaning more into Jesus, knowing him more, knowing him deeper, relying on others and community to kind of shine a light where maybe we're not seeing something rightly, I think is so important. Yeah. One of the things when you were talking about the catamaran, not the catamaran specifically, but just like when you talk about if you allow your heart sometimes to go to that place of not liking people, loving people, but not liking people and just wanting to escape or whatever, for some reason that really struck me because I think we all do that. Mm-hmm. And recently, for me, it goes in cycles. I have done that with social media. Like because it was causing my heart to see people in an ugly way and just to get really frustrated and angry. But my question is, do you think I am hiding away? Like you were talking about, what's the balance there, I guess? And if you think I'm hiding away, tell me and I'll sign back up for the things. I don't know if I want to though, but, so what is that balance?
Yeah. Well, I it's a good, I think it's gotta be, here's what I would say. Even Jesus escaped out on his boat to get away from the people. I mean, I think we all need that rest. We all need those boundaries. We all need that space. And like I said in the sermon, I mean, we are created for autonomy, but just in relationship. But sometimes we need that autonomy and we do need to get away. I think for me, when I start fantasizing, I'm not fantasizing about a good, healthy kind of, I need to be by myself for a while to refresh. I think of, screw you people. I'm going out on the water. I'm done with you all. I'm done with you all. I don't need you. I can be on the boat with the sun and the solar panels. I'm fine. And I'm going to sit and watch the dolphins and write haikus. I mean, that's totally different than what Jesus was doing, where like he had been healing people and feeding people and preaching to people, and the crowds were just encroaching. And his good friend, John the Baptist, just got killed, and he just needed a space where he could grieve. That's really different than Dan's fantasizing about being. We're both on a boat, but very different boats and for very different reasons. So
again, it comes back to posture of the heart, because when you, like you said, that autonomy, and maybe because of wealth, you've been able to live in autonomy, it can kind of be like a flip in your nose or an F you. To people. And that's just not what we're called to be or do. Where you become so self-reliant because of what you depend upon is something that you've built up for yourself, and you have wealth to be able to do that. That just seems to be, not that it's wrong to have wealth, but again, posture of the heart. Like, what is your lens like in regards to his people, God's people and his kingdom? So, Yeah. All right, Dan. Well, I know, like I said, that you had some stuff that you had to cut out, and I want to give you an opportunity to share those things, because I'm sure they're good and helpful, and I think people want to know.
Sure. Yeah. There's a couple things I cut out, especially when I was wrestling with. Now, a lot of people I talked to about the fact that Jesus doesn't know how the eye works. They were just like, but like for me, I was like, no, he's got to be a good ophthalmologist. He's the creator, you know? And so as I was going through that, there were a couple other kind of reasons why, okay, this makes sense. And one of them I'll share here. And that is, the question is like, what if Jesus really didn't understand how the eye worked? And I think that's very plausible that he wouldn't understand how the eye worked. And the reason, a reason for that is, even if he is God, the scripture teaches that he was also fully human. And Paul, the Apostle Paul, tells us that he emptied himself of his divinity in order to become one of us, And so, in fact, Luke 2:52 even says that Jesus had to learn, had to grow in wisdom, which means that he didn't know everything as a human. Now, when the Spirit descends on him, then he demonstrates like supernatural knowledge. But as a human, he had to learn. And so saying that Jesus didn't understand how the eye really worked, I don't think it threatens the Gospels any more than saying that Jesus sometimes had to burp. I mean, that's just what a human does. So that's the first thing I cut out, and maybe that'll be helpful for someone. The other thing is, there's this. If you do feel envious or greedy, or you start lusting and fantasizing about catamarans, you shouldn't feel shame or like self-loathing about that. I would encourage people to look at that as an indicator light on your dashboard that says, okay, something's off here. I shouldn't be fantasizing about a $5 million solar powered catamaran when I make an elementary school teacher's salary. I mean, what am I doing? Why am I spending an hour on YouTube over this? I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so just think of that as an indicator, like what's really going on underneath the surface. And for me, that exploration brought me to this realization that every time I do this, it's always because I'm really frustrated with people at the time. And that really helps to say, okay, I need to work on that. Why am I frustrated? How can I resolve that? How can I fix those relationships? How can I alter my view toward people? And that is just a much more fruitful kind of way to go about dealing with those emotions than frittering my time in the wind. And so those are the two big things that I cut out. And then the other stuff is all pretty small, but yeah.
Well, to your first point that you cut out, I do think it's helpful for people to hear that. And I think both explanations are highly plausible. But the thing that you did say that I thought covers both of those angles is that it doesn't really matter what Jesus understands about the eye. It matters what the audience understood about the eye. So whether he knew and was accommodating a speaker of their language, or whether he was acting in his fully humanness and didn't understand, he was still speaking in a way in which the audience at that time clearly understood. So I thought either way, I see that as loving and sovereign. I know you're not the only person, Dan, that asks those questions. So I think that there are folks out there who are like, finally, someone is starting from that point first to kind of get us to the next point. And then secondly, remind me of your second but the second thing that you didn't get to share.
Yeah, just that you shouldn't feel guilty or, self-loathing if you feel envious or you start lusting after riches. That's just a light on your dashboard saying
it's an indicator. Yeah, absolutely. And I've known so many people that will beat themselves up and like, oh, I got to do better. I got to, and it's like, no, pay attention to what you're seeing, what you're feeling, and use that as an opportunity to take that before the Lord and ask him to examine your heart, examine your thoughts. Don't beat yourself up about it, but like Dan said, use that as an opportunity to kind of gauge where you are. And chances are, because we serve a loving God who doesn't want us to constantly be confused about what's happening, chances are he'll begin to reveal to us how we need to get back centered on him.
Yeah, that's good. Well said. Okay. Yeah, that's
all right.
Great.
I think it's nugget time, and you may think, Shawna, I've said all the things. I have no more nuggets, but I believe, Dan, that you have a nugget for the MuseCast community that you need to share.
Yeah. All right, let me assess the recesses here. Wait, hold on. Okay. Yeah, I got something.
Shine your laser light.
I got something.
See, I knew it.
This was another thing that I was going to pursue, but I ended up cutting. But it was never officially part of it, so it wasn't officially a cut piece.
Okay.
But it's this, as we're looking at this whole series, this whole section of text, which largely is about money, but I think it's actually really a path of investment. It's not really about money. It's about a path of investment, where when you look at these three sets of texts, you have you have the two treasures, so the treasures of heaven or the treasures of earth. Then you've got the two kinds of eye, the good eye or the evil eye. And then you've got the two masters, God or mammon. And so I think that really it starts with which eye are you using and which treasure are you pursuing? And you can't do both. And so, but it's not just about money. And I think that's really important because, when you look at the New Testament, we're definitely called to share our money and our wealth with the poor. Jesus tells us to do this in Matthew 19:21. But there's so many different types of power other than money. There's your intelligence, there's your sense of humor, there's your affableness, there's your looks, there's your strength, there's just anything that can be persuasive or powerful in any way. That's your power, and it applies to all of those things, not just money. And so, the Apostle Paul tells us to dwell on what is good. So, what do you really have? What is good? Not what might be good for somebody else, but what you have that's good. In other words, dwell on the good that you already have. To be patient with all. That's how we should use our resources, is to be patient with all, not to abandon all on a boat, but to be patient with them. To rejoice always, to be generous, to build one another up. Those are the types of ways that we can invest all of these other resources other than money into our relationships and into our community. And I think that creates a bigger return on those investments. So that's would be my nugget, is to think more than just money when you think about these ideas, and to pursue all of those things.
Dan, our nuggets are actually tied together because my nugget actually goes back to something specific. I'm stealing from you, your own words in your sermon, but my nugget is about this investment thing. And I know many people think, well, that doesn't pertain to me because I don't have anything to invest. No, actually you do. You have yourself, you have your mind, you have your friendship, you have your heart, you have your talents, you have your time, you have all these things. There are ways in which you can invest in things that are kingdom oriented, things that are good, things that are healthy, instead of things that will fade away and burn up, when time is done. So that's my nugget, is look at your life and look at where you are investing yourself. And by yourself, we do mean, yes, your finances, but your time, your talent, your power. We each have a modicum of power. How are we investing that? Other resources. I love that you even our physical self, our looks, our friendship, all of the things. How are you investing that? And ask the Lord to shine a light to say, oh, okay, maybe I need to shift some of my investments. Maybe I need to take some from here and put a little more there. You're bigger into investment language than I am, Dan, but I think that makes sense, right?
Diversify.
Diversify. There it is. Diversify your investment, folks, and allow the Lord to reveal to you where that should be. That's my nugget.
That's awesome. That's great.
And thank you so much for your sermon. It was really fun and helpful. And I look forward to hearing from you again, but it won't be in this series, right? Or will it be?
Nope.
Maybe.
No.
Okay.
No, it's going to be well. No, Greg is back this week, and I'm looking forward to his sermon. I'm not going to give him any teasers. Or I'll give him one teaser.
Okay, I was going to say, are you sure? No teasers?
He's going to, I think he's going to get philosophical this weekend about the principalities and powers related to mammon. And I'm looking forward to it. So
awesome. Well, the metaverse pastor has spoken. He has shared with us. He has encouraged us, informed us. And so thank you, Dan. Thank you, MuseCast community, for tuning in. And we encourage you to continue tuning in on the weekend for the sermons, because they're going to get good and better and good and better as they have already been. And then circle back with us, because we'll be here continuing the conversation right here on earth, here in this universe, right here. Right. All right, you guys, have a great week.
See you guys.